Okay, welcome everyone to our diverse webinar series. My name is Catherine Knodel. If you don't know who I am, I'm the Western Project Coordinator for Diverse. Before we begin, I want to start with a land acknowledgement. The University of Alberta acknowledges that we are located on Treaty 6 territory and respects the histories, languages, and cultures of First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and all First Peoples of Canada, whose presence continues to enrich our vibrant community. So today our speaker is Dr. Marie-Josée Fortin, who is an ecologist by training. She has four main research areas: spatial ecology, forest ecology, landscape ecology, and spatial statistics. Her research program studies the effects of global changes, land use, and climate on species spatial dynamics of the landscape and geographical range levels, both in multi-use forested ecosystems and aquatic networks to maintain biodiversity and species conservation. Through her work, Marie-Josée is a Canada Research Chair in Spatial Ecology, provides ecologists with novel network and analytical methods that can be used to propose management strategies to facilitate species dispersal in fragmented landscapes, to maintain the resilience of ecosystem services, or to prevent disease spread. And she's a professor at the University of Toronto. So I'm going to let Marie-Josée take it away. So turn on your camera, share your screen, and yeah, looking forward to hearing your talk.
Okay, so good day, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. I am pleased to present to you the overview of Team 3 and Team 4, and as well, I will end my presentation with the data requirement that we have for the partners for being able to accomplish all the tasks this diverse project has for us. So basically, most of you know, but repetition is always good, that there are 6 teams in diverse, and they all interlinked to one another and dependent on one another to facilitate a more resilient forest for the years to come, giving climate change and other disturbances. Today, I will focus only on Team 3 and Team 4. So they are opposite of these puzzle pieces, but they are definitely linked if you look at them into another perspective. And this is the one that was in the grant proposal that I like, where we see exactly that the information from Team 1 and Team 2 will be fed to Team 3, and Team 3 will be working in collaboration to Team 4, but Team 4 will also be important to implement and to promote various silviculture treatment for Team 5 and Team 6 to see how it's feasible from an economic perspective and a field perspective. So everything is linked, and there's a lot of redundancy, but complementary that is needed to make this a successful project. So a little bit of why are we working at the landscape scale is that the disturbance can be more models at that scale. So this is a review paper with Brian Sutherland, that is a collaborator with Diverse in United States. And here is just to show that everything is important. The plot level, the stand level, the landscape level, and the bound level are important. And there's feedback effect from one scale to another. And here, what we want with Diverse is really to integrate the natural disturbance and the human disturbance, and how that will affect the sustainability of the species that live in forests, but also the forest itself. Oops. No, wrong direction, sorry. Here, another kind of perspective of those disturbances that they are interacting in one another, and there's more of them. When I started my career, life was easy. We were doing harvesting and fire. Now we need to integrate insect outbreak, climate scenario, there's a wind throw, there's soil differences, carbon sequestration, and then there's all those different management scenarios that each province environments have different intensity of ecosystem services, climate adaptation, so on and so forth. So everything is a lot of interaction. So then we have to sacrifice some local regeneration information to be able to accommodate the interaction between those disturbances. No, that doesn't work. Okay. This research of diverse is stemming from many publication and knowledge that we've been accumulating through the years. And using the Quebec permanent plot data, it's been shown by Brice and Al that disturbance amplify tree community response to climate change. So disturbance strongly modify the community response, and that moderate disturbance here, quote unquote, harvesting, facilitate the gain of warm adapted species that are accelerating the change in the species composition to have more thermophiliation. That's a very terrible term to say that the trees are more adapted to other climatic conditions that are more in the south, so warm condition, and that this change in community is mostly driven in Quebec, maybe not elsewhere, by the game of maple syrup, maple trees. So basically, this framework and other perspective have triggered Christian Messier and others to propose this kind of management of different civiculture and functional trait of species to favor the resilience of forests through disturbances. So in that figure here, there's different scales. So there's at the stand level, the ownership and the landscape, where you maybe want to do some plantation, enrichment at the forest stand, and maybe some kind of specific harvesting prescription that will favor forest resilience to those disturbances that I should presented before. So here, the idea is also that the forest is a dynamic system. So the forest stands age, there's succession, there's fragmentation, there's the fires, insect that will create patches. So we can use this and favor the complexity of those mosaic stand and use network theory to address the complexity that we're seeing in nature. So in red, I circle maybe what could be as forest stand, and the blue is the dispersal, maybe seed or animal movement that favor the dispersal of seed from one part of the landscape to another one. So here, team 3 is aiming to really implement the rules to do this kind of functional complex network approach that combine functional trait and network of forest stands in a new approach to do forest management. I don't know why this doesn't work. So basically, team 3 is having as goal to apply this new concept approach of functional complex network to design resilient forest landscape that will be able to sustain a novel environment and climatic conditions. So first we need to quantify what is actual now and see how can we make maps of the potential resilience of the forest. And that can be achieved by enhancing connectivity. So making the stand more resilient and the distance between the stand closer maybe for wildlife, but at the same time maybe favoring some kind of fire resilience or host resilience to insect outbreaks. So having some kind of more modularity. So it's kind of both kind of philosophy of where should we enhance, where should we favor fire break. So this functional connectivity network approach is really merging two types of theory that we have in ecology, the network approach and functional trait of species. So we will implement this new framework using and comparing different successional pathways, given that now we're going to change the forest stand composition and the spatial arrangement configuration of those forest stands. So to do that, we will use simulation model with the Landis 2 package or program. Note that Team 2 just started a month ago, so we were scheduled to start only in year 2, and that's been a month that we are in the action, I would say. So I'm the lead of Team 3, and we have now a postdoc with us that just started in November, and in May we will have a PhD student that will start. All of us, we are located in Toronto, and as a goal, we need to implement the rules and scenario that will implement this functional approach in different forest management unit across Canada. This is in collaboration with another researcher at the University of Toronto, Patrick James, of course, Christian Messier, Fan Yang He at the University of Alberta. Then there's many collaborators throughout the world that had been already developed those approach, like Nuria Equilue, that I will present some of her work later. Elise Filota, Marco, Mina, and Kevin, and Matthew, and Stephen. So it's a big group of people, and we will work on this development of rules and scenarios. So this approach, this is a kind of a graphical abstract that present all the steps that are needed to do this approach. So we need to first establish what is the functional diversity and redundancy. So here we have maybe a forest that has a lot of diversity, but not a lot of redundancy. If one species disappear, then we lose a function. So those are two different aspects. Then how this is laid out in space. So how is the adjacency of those forest stands that have different diversity and redundancy, which are the silviculture practices that we can do, enrichment, plantation, and harvesting prescription. And then we are using a Landis simulation model to change the different intensity of succession, disturbance, and climate change and forest management, of course. So this is, in a nutshell, the functional complex network approach. So here, those functional response is in two terms, like this diversity that I mentioned. So in all different gradient of environment, we need to have functional diversity, and we need to have redundancies to buffer biodiversity loss. And the functional trait that we use so far, but will be now modified by Team 1 and Team 3, are those 8 ones here listed. So basically drought, insect resistant, seed mass, mother reproduction, so on and so forth. So the connectivity is now going to be captured by 3 index. We are maybe going to add some, but those are the 3 that we've been using so far. So connectivity, centrality, and modularity. I will explain that in one moment. Whoops, wrong direction. So here, connectivity is geometry, I would say, to look at how many patches do we have of forest stand and what are the potential link between them. So here in the previous study, what we use as connectivity, it was the seed dispersal ability up to 1 kilometer. But of course, this can be changed, but this is a case where we have those 6 forest stands, and some patches have more connection than others. Whoops. And centrality is to be able to assess which forest stand are crucial to the movement of either animal for the connectivity in the landscape, or the transient from one location to another for the seed by animal vector. So now centrality is showing us that the stands C and D are really having more connection, and if they are not there, the network will be divided, and the peripheral patches have less centrality because they are in periphery. So this is what it is. Then modularity is the same 6 patches, is trying to say, well, maybe we want to promote more fire break or insect spread break or pest, other type of pest break. So we want to remove links. So we want to create those module or nodes that are connected to one another. So we call that in the jargon subgraph, but basically is a group of forest stand that are separate enough that they behave close enough to promote connectivity, but far enough to not have fire breaks, to have promote fire breaks. So putting all of this together, Nuria Equilue, in her thesis, she used that in the Bois-Franc region in Quebec, and the representation of those different index is used by those radar plots where we have the 5 index, so 3 connectivity, 2 functional aspect, and then each increment here is 25 increase of favoring this trait. So here, what we see is the reference in black is having not much centrality, connectivity, or modularity. If we were to promote trees that are drought resistant, that's in this kind of very close to the um, uh, reference 1. So already this forest had some kind of drought resistant. There's the pest resistant in green, and yellow is the harvesting. So we see how the harvesting create more modularity as expected, and how can we change the species composition to have something more complete in all those directions. So this was applied in Bois-Franc region. This is a large region that had already been studied. So there was field data, and then there were 34 species with those 8 functional traits that were analyzed. And then this is just a cartoon. That's not exactly what we've been doing, but just to illustrate that now we can create a network of link between those patches of forest, and then where can we have some kind of mixed plantation, enrichment, or some kind of key silviculture intervention. Then the connectivity, centrality. So here we see the circle is bigger forest patches, and they're important in the centrality, and the line is the link between them. So we can see already that some area are more isolated than others, and those are the property that we want to modify or not, depending. So here one result that she had was, let's say that the upper panel is trying to say, what about the functional enrichment versus plantation? And how do we change the composition will change the amount of connectivity, diversity, or redundancy. So the different color here is the management intensity. So 10% of improvement, 40 or 70, that is a lot. And then you could see that you can change definitely the forest stand and the relationship between the forest stand. So here the modularity was not improved, but definitely centrality, connectivity, diversity, and redundancy was very affected positively for drought in this case. In another study in Haliburton Forest here in Ontario, the same approach was taken. So here we, at the middle, we have the functional tree. We have how the network is the kind of more functional network in kind of network theory nodes and links. And based on that, there was different scenarios of intensity of management that was applied, and surprise, surprise, when there's more harvest and how high plantation, the amount of connectivity and diversity was increased with management intensity that increased as well. So those are nice illustration, and then strong of this information, this kind of map of vulnerability of this landscape in Haliburton, zone 3, could be helping to say where should we promote this functional diversity or network approach. So this is a summary of what Team 3 has done before diverse occur, and now that diverse is there and that Team 3 is active, we will implement that and see how we can have those rules in different parts of the country. So now I will switch to Team 4, which is the forest management and simulation to accommodate climate change and disturbance. And the Team 4 is really aiming to compare different forest management strategy using this model LANSDIS 2 that has this phenology succession module that is more adapted to forest respond to those environmental changes. In the proposal, that's not to say that we not have more of those forest management strategy, but the one that we propose is this loosely defined business as usual. And of course, across the country and different forest unit, it will vary what is a forest practice. So we will need to accommodate for that. Then we'll see how can we implement climate change, climate smart forests, where the silviculture is going to add species that are coming from more adapted new conditions. So seed from southern region, maybe maximize carbon storage and so on and so forth. And then the functional complex network approach that Team 3 is going to provide. So basically, this is all going to be implemented in LANDIS and run under mild and severe climate change scenario. The Team 4 has started in year 1 and was led by Elise Filota, and she took another position, so I took over her leadership, and maybe she will be back, I don't know. But in the meanwhile, I'm trying to help in Team 4. And Team 4, we are very fortunate that Clément Hardy, that is a research associate in the Team 4, is leading the development and implementation of those 3 forest management. And also we have Mathieu Garcia that just started as a LANDIS developer, professor at the University of Madison, Wisconsin. And we are still in the search for PhD student, 2 PhD students that will look and compare those different scenarios, mostly in the Alberta region or BC region. So this is, we have maybe 1 candidate and we're looking for another one. So again, this is part of a bigger collaboration with, again, Patrick James, Christian Messier, people at University of Alberta, Charles Knotts, Fang Yang He, and Brad Pino, and then other people that have been already listed in the previous Team 3, Elise, Stephen Meyer, Kevin, Brian Sullivan, and Jan Boulanger. And I'm sure I forget a lot of other people. The slide could not hold more names. So LANDIS 2 is having a lot of features, maybe too many. So you need to really be careful when you implement to make sure that the model is sensitive enough to those new features that one will implement. And then we have the succession part that is crucial, that is more related to the change in the environment that the trees are going to be faced with. And also there's a different kind of disturbance module for insect outbreak, which is very particular, and we were fortunate that there is such thing. Implementing insect outbreak is not as easy as one would think. Then there's a fire model that we will hope to improve. And then there's all those kind of harvesting, biomass management practices that are implemented, as well as Clément Hardy in his thesis has developed a road network to be able to be more realistic in the management of harvesting in the landscape. Then there could be some kind of a climate scenario, of course, drought signal, the soil relationship, so on and so forth. And of course, we want to implement the functional trait and the functional network that I presented before. And the functional traits, again, will be supplemented by team 1 and team 2 to show the breadth of new intra-species variability, especially if we bring seed and other species from certain locations. So how are they going to be able to cope with different environments? So we had already in the same Bois Franc region implemented lenses as a way to change the landscape. With the study that I showed you previously with Nuria thesis, she just implement the different scenario, but not with each climate change and different harvesting impact. So this is something that's been possible with the contribution of Marco Mina and Mathieu Duveneck and Christian, of course, where we look at 5 regions. So now in this Bois Franc region, we subdivided in 5 different regions, Nicolet, Yamaska, Drummond, Bécancour, l'Érable, et Arthabasca. And then we use different current climate, moderate change in climate, high climate change. And then we had general disturbance, and we had the control and business as usual. So strong of that, we Landis modified the initial condition, and you can see that depending of the undercurrent control, so that's mean the same static climate condition than now, with some kind of moderate disturbance and business as usual and high disturbance, how just the color, you can see that there's difference, and we lose maybe the coniferous and the hardwood are taking over. Not big surprise, of course. But here, another way to represent that is that the biomass, if you have no management versus business as usual with low disturbance and high disturbance, the biomass is decreasing, and the different colors, the gray is the kind of control under current condition. Then you have blue low emissions, and red is high emission. So you can see that the biomass will decrease, and this is for the entire study area. And if you look now, those radar plots are the 5 points. Direction is the 5 regions. So there's differences in the different measurements that were analyzed. So functional diversity, functional redundancy, and connectivity. So you could see that the impact of the more disturbed areas had more there was more effect of high disturbance, where we lost the redundancy in most of the case. So those are the type of analysis that we want to have throughout Canada in those management units. So the key findings of those research was that the forested landscape can be represented as functional network. Combining functional trait and connectivity improve the forest resilience to disturbance. The functional enrichment of poor stand is a win-win strategy. So that's really what we are promoting, and we'll compare and assess throughout different locations. And that stand enrichment and plantation help the forest to cope to pest outbreak and drought. In this case, these were the 2 traits that we study with the Nuria thesis. So diverse is, and there's a lot of link and importance of feeding information from one team to another. And what is important is to realize that we have different needs across the country. And what I presented to you is Bois-Franc and Haliburton here, but there's very different type of forests throughout Canada. And we have sent, or Kevin sent you all, I hope, a data request for helping us to calibrate and the different land use models throughout the country. So the document was written by Clément Hardy, that is part of Team 4. And then here we have the different needs. So the most important need, I would say, is forest inventory. So we need the initial conditions and grow and mortality parameter if possible. So then this information is really required for initialize lenses in those different land areas and to validate after the parameters. So we need to have a check that this is valid in those, that what we are going to model is not completely out of the range of what are the conditions currently. So basically we need forest that inventory data that should include tree species composition, as much as possible estimate of the stand age, and if we have the age of some individual trees, that would be fantastic. So this is something that will be needed. Then, if possible, other information at the plot level and tree growth curve could be very useful to, again, we will simulate how trees are going to grow in different conditions. So we need to have this information. And if possible, if you have information within the stand, within the forest management area, but a little bit outside in the vinicity for a long period of time, that will help us to do a better calibration of the model. Then natural and human disturbance will be very important so that we can see what is the natural frequency of those disturbances. Of course, with the climate change scenarios, we're going to implement them as having what is the baseline and how we can have stronger, like I said, low disturbance or high disturbance, but we need to know what is the baseline to work with. So forest harvesting is something that we cannot get without the help of the partner. So we need this kind of different age, um, when an operation has been implemented, the area affected, and what is the type of harvesting that was done. Is it clear cut, retention, selected cut? We will need to know that to see how long the imprint of those management are going to last in the landscape. Then we have the need for soil data, elevation and slope. This is to allow us to do ecoregions. So Landis is need to know how the landscape is it favoring the growth of trees? So is the soil allowing tree to grow fast, or is it the growth curve will not be as good? The elevation, slope, and soil type will allow us to do how can we develop those roads to get to the harvested places. So there's a lot of reason why this would be useful. And then any kind of information of climate locally that people have will be good. Of course, some of those data information, we can get them, but if you give them to us, it will facilitate and make us our life easier. But the thing that we cannot invent and look in the web, there's Google Earth Engine that will give us some kind of proxy, and we can work with those definitely. But the forest inventory is crucial. Without that, we cannot calibrate the models. So this is the most important information that we need. So maybe I spoke fast, I'm sorry. But again, this is really team 3 is starting. We had already a lot of knowledge from previous research, and now we need to have new successional rules and to see how we can implement this kind of dual fire break or insect break with connectivity in different regions in Canada, and work with team 1 and 2 to see which species functional trait are the best and to implement that with the team 4. So team 4 is really central, I would say, and it cannot start without doing sensitivity analysis. So already Clément and Matthew Garcia, we have been meeting to see what would be the parameters that could be changed to be able to respond to those changes. So what is the sensitivity of those different functional traits that can percolate in the model? So sometimes there's so many components, you remember the slide of Landis, that changing a parameter to be percolating through the assemblage of all those rules is crucial to investigate. And that's what Clément is doing now, to see which parameter can be changed and have an impact, and those that are, you need to change them so much that it's not worth our emphasis for the moment. Then, strong of all of this, we will be able to test our new approach and see how resilient the forest will be to those global threats from different regions and different threats. And we will learn how to also have the social uncertainty of is it feasible to change forests, and what is the implication from a social perspective? This is team 5. And how can we implement it in the field? This is team 6. So thank you for your attention. And if there's any question, please, we have plenty time.
Hey, thank you very much, Marie-Josée, for that wonderful presentation. We're open to questions now. There's already one on the Zoom chat. So Marie-Josée, I'll read it out to you. This is from Morgane Dendonker. Her first question is, in a landscape that is covered by forests, so not fragmented, with no empty space between forest stands, how do we choose the nodes, i.e. how do we draw stands boundaries?
Excellent question. Basically, we hope that there will be some differences of forest age, so, and forest composition. So at the minimum, stand is an area that is more or less homogeneous in terms of age and composition. And that's what the forest eventually, is polygons, right? So you draw a polygon, and if it's so big, that means that this is a homogeneous area. So now the stand needs to be basically enriched, but there's maybe no problem of connectivity. Then the connectivity, let's say that everything is adjacent, like you said, there's no fragmentation like we had in the Bois Franc region. Then the connectivity is the adjacency. So what is the area that the two stands share as boundary? So you can look at the perimeter of share area. So that will be your boundary. So they are connected or not. And we can, there's in landscape ecology, there's a lot of metric to see the contrast between patches as well. So how proximate, not just the proximity, but the complexity. So this is going to be a way that we don't have the distance, but we can look at different ages. I don't know if that answers your question, Morgan. There was another question of Morgan, I think, too.
Morgan just responded to your answer. So in adjacent stands, we can have links with a distant equals to 0. It will be like a friction zone.
Yes, so basically they will be connected, right? So that's the best case scenario. And again, it's maybe less important for the forest as there will be plantations. So the connectivity is the plantation itself. So we bring seed from different locations versus the connectivity for wildlife. So don't forget that also I have not mentioned it, but we are also interested to have the forests connected for the forests, the trees composition, but also how they are promoting the wildlife movement. So, and insect outbreak. And so there's different connectivity, I would say, and depending of what we are studying, we will see that the species are, I'm thinking now, sorry, of animal wildlife movement versus fire breaks, so on and so forth. So let's say that between two stand, maybe we plant deciduous trees that will hopefully, I say hopefully, stop the spread of fire or non-host species. So those will be breaks. So then there will be a distance between the two other forests then.
Thank you, Marie-José. I see, Madeline, you have your hand up. Do you want to ask a question?
Yes, we have a question here by Charles. I don't know if you can see a little bit in the room, just to give you an idea.
University of Alberta. Thanks for a really interesting talk, Marie-José. I was just curious about the minimum sort of patch size in Landis. And the reason why I was curious about that is thinking about whether retention patches would then influence connectivity in different kind of harvest plants within the simulations.
Right. Okay. Yes. Landis is a grid base. So let's say that we have a polygon of forest stand. We will need to, if it's smaller than our grid size, you need, if you look at the map of the areas underneath here, they're huge. So in Bois Franc, we use 100 by 100 meters, so 1 hectare. So within an hectare, there could be some kind of retention. And then you need to understand that Landis is working within the cell is age cohort of each tree composition. And then we can say there's a retention of such age in this, that cell of 100 meter. So yes, definitely that could be accommodated, and that will be kind of the silviculture module of Landis that can be modified to accommodate that. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question,
No,
Charles.
That's really interesting. Thank you for that.
I have another question from Phil Burton online here.
Yep.
Back to resilience. Do I understand you to say that forest resilience can be defined by a combination of connectivity, centrality, modularity, functional redundancy, and response diversity? Have you devised an index or have you compared some forests by those metrics?
So that's the those are the radar plots that I was showing to you. So we had those kind of values, and then it's not a multivariate synthesis. Each of them are separately because they provide different information. And if we were to put them together, we will miss exactly what is important. And those are the ones we started with to say that we will not add some, but more is not better sometimes. So we need to make sure that they are meaningful. And that's the sensitivity analysis that we're going to do in team 3 to check a little bit more those information. But we don't want too many because then we don't have ways to compare if it's very some index that is particular to one region but not another region. One thing that we will compare is definitely the impact for forest versus wildlife management.
Thanks again, Marie-José. If anyone else has any questions, please put them in the chat, or for those of you that are all together viewing in person. Gord, I see you have your hand up. I'm going to allow you to talk, and then you should be able to ask your question.
Can you hear me now? Hey, I just like to ask a little more on the wildfire side of things. I'm just wondering how the functional diversity projections through Landis are going to line up with things like natural range of variation, you know, natural disturbance cycles that have been identified, and provincial, I imagine even regional uh, uh, work going towards improving the or reducing the wildfire risk on the landscape. How are you going to prioritize those kind of things when you have one bumping up against the other?
I know. Thank you. This is my nightmare of the year. There is natural disturbance in the cycle and the frequency, and we have seen in the last 2 years, in 2023, the amount of fires in Quebec were very important. So the point being is to promote trees that are maybe more drought resistant. The two studies that I showed you were more in Bois-Franc and Haliburton, where there's a lot of potential of deciduous trees. So maybe, let's say, I haven't been in Alberta in a long time, but the aspen maybe could be one type of trees to promote. And so I think it's an intermix of trees of different resistance. But of course, climate is not going to help us in the sense that if there's many years of drought, we need also species that are drought resistant. And that's the main factor, I would say, that make trees more susceptible to fire is drought. So I think those are the type of composition, and I hope that team 1 and 2 will help me to identify those species. So work in progress, you're completely right, Gordon. These are complex issue, and maybe we will not be able to do it everywhere in the same intensity, that's for sure.
Can you still hear me?
Yes.
So in regard to Landis, are you able to project out functional diversity and wildfire risk at the same time?
So in the simulation, we will implement a series, let's say, as the stand is harvested or destroyed by some disturbance, we need to do some plantation, right? So that's the opportunity to change the species composition. And then there's the sequence of that. So we can have, and currently the fire model in Landis is maybe not the best. We are looking at improving it, but now it's quite simple, but we need to have a one that is more responding to those new species composition. So we are aware of this, Gordon, and I know this is important, and I think we have ways to implement BFOL that has been developed in Ontario. Hopefully that will be a solution.
Okay, thanks for today. We have a little bit more time here. I have another question from online. At the grid cell level, PNet succession tracks leaf area index. In the case of residual forest of finer resolution than the grid cell, one might apply an LAI threshold to determine whether a cell is open or closed canopy.
Lovely. Brian Sutoven is an expert in this, and he's a collaborator with us. So basically, we will look at those information. This open and close will be very important for the grow and speed of growth. So yes, completely possible, I hope. But I'm I must admit, I never used Landis, so I'm guilty. I use other models, and Brian knows them with Celeste. So I have some understanding of certain features, and that's why we have collaboration with Brian and others that know much better Landis than I.
Okay, I don't see any more questions coming in. So,
no, Phil has another, and Matt.
oh yeah, you're right. Okay. Phil Burton added, related to Gordon's comments, do you have any thoughts on finding the right balance between connectivity for biodiversity and climate change adaptation and modularity to reduce fire and pest spread?
Well, I had this little cartoon where I had those nodes that were connected, and the distance between another was not there. There was no link. So I think that's really what it is to create module, so sub-region that are connected, and maybe with some kind of fire break. So that's the only vision that I can see making it possible, Phil.
Matthew, I see you have your hand up, so you can unmute and speak to ask a question.
Sure. Hi. Wonderful talk. Great to hear you discussing this. Just a quick response to that last open closed canopy question. I use peanut succession and Landis a great deal. And the newest version of peanut succession does indeed allow for sort of partial opening of cells. So an individual cell has the potential to have a partial disturbance, for example, where the successional dynamics are happening within a cell, but that cell can be partially filled or completely filled or completely open. So that's a relatively new change that has happened to peanut succession. So that might answer that question that came up.
Okay, well, thank you, Matthew. So Matthew was a collaborator with those paper of Nuria that I showed in Marco Mina. So we've been a kind of a group of people trying to address those issues already. And now is the implementation and trying to make it feasible across the country. So thank you, Matt.
Anyone else have any questions or want to raise their hand? Okay, I think that is the end of that. Thank you so much, Marie-Josée, for sharing with us on themes 3 and 4. And thank you to everyone who showed up. We love having as much engagement as possible with Diverse. Our next webinar will be in the new year, and we will hear from Dr. Harry Nelson, the theme lead for theme 5 of the Diverse Project, and that will be at the same time on December 16th, also a Zoom webinar. I hope you all have a wonderful holiday season. And yeah, thank you very much and have a great rest of your day. Safe in the snow if you're in Alberta. It's pretty crazy out there right now. So yeah, thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.